Welcome to Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie Valentine and the host of this podcast. I'm a physician, evidential psychic medium, international keynote speaker, and author of Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide. The inspiration for this podcast came from my own life experiences. As I have journeyed through life, it has taught me that we're part of a greater divine web of interconnectedness. I have walked the path of illness, healing, and transformation. After 2 near-death experiences, I became clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, and was guided to attend medical school at the age of 54. We will be meeting with many different types of doctors, healers, as well as spiritual leaders, educators, and other inspiring souls in this podcast. It is my hope that you will gain information and create a path to healing your own life physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and bridge the gap between science and soul. To learn more about me or to work with me spiritually for ancestral healing, medical intuitive, evidential psychic medium, or to take my 8-week-long course, Soul's Journey, Heart's Way, a course for authentic living, which will explore opening the doors to your divine potential. Available in most time zones across the world and starting March 27th, 2021. Please visit divinespiritualessence.com. To work with me as a physician, please visit drlottie.com. Welcome to Science with Soul. Today, I'm so excited to introduce Dr. Dr Bor, Doctor of Chiropractic and Diplomat of American Chiropractic Neurology Board. Dr. Dr Bor was born and raised in a chiropractic family in Voorhees, New Jersey. He attended the College of New Jersey, graduating with a bachelor's degree in exercise science. Dr. Bor has a passion for health, and with the previous chiropractic care he's received throughout his life, he went on to earn his Doctorate of Chiropractic from Palmer College of Chiropractic in Port Orange, Florida. While attending chiropractic school, Dr. Bor served as the president of the Functional Neurology Club for 2 years. As president, he conducted presentations and taught students how to better understand the clinical application of neurology. His passion for neuroscience encouraged him to pursue advanced training, completing over 400 hours of postgraduate education through the International Associate of Functional Neurology and Rehabilitation and the Carrick Institute. Dr. Bor is board certified by the American Board of Chiropractic Neurology. For his passion and dedication to furthering his knowledge, Dr. Bor was also rewarded the prestigious Clinical Excellence Award in his graduating class. Dr. Bor has also sought advanced training focusing in the treatment of childhood neurodevelopmental disorders. He has completed fellowship courses for the management of conditions such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, Tourette's, and PANDAS, pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections. Dr. Bor is passionate for helping others achieve their highest potential. His mission is to help others by applying clinical neuroscience and chiropractic care in the same way it has helped him. A warm welcome to you, Dr. Bor. I'm so excited to have you here on the show today.
Dr. Lottie, I appreciate you having me on here. I'm a huge fan of the show, and it's an honor to be invited on the podcast with you. I'm super excited to do this.
I'm so excited to have you here, and I can't wait to have you share your knowledge about how to treat the kids with developmental disorders. But let's start with can you just talk a little bit about what is chiropractic neurology?
Right, so chiropractic neurology, to become a chiropractic neurologist, you have to graduate from chiropractic school, which is around 3.5 years. To become board eligible, you have to complete over 300 hours through an accredited university of everything from neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, vestibular rehab, the clinical applications of neurologic rehabilitation. And then after you graduate, you're able to sit for a board exam. This board exam is a pretty rigorous exam. It's 2 days, hundreds and hundreds of questions. You have your whole practical after that. And I was lucky enough to pass that this couple months back. So I'm kind of new on this journey. I've been doing this for a handful of years now, but it's cool to finally be a board certified chiropractic neurologist. So what we do is, it has a similarities to medical neurology, like a medical neurologist. But the biggest difference is within our treatment paradigm. So a medical neurologist is awesome at doing their whole physical exam, and their whole goal of treatment is to see if there's any true pathologies, see if there's any tumors, see if there's any bleeds, and offer different pharmaceutical or surgical measures to be able to bring function back into the body. So what we do is it's quite similar in the neurologic exam aspect of it. So we do a similar exam, but our whole idea is to look at the overall function of the body. While of course we're looking to see if there's any red flags that warrant an immediate referral, we more so want to see how the different networks are working and what's working good and what's working not good. So in our office, we run around a 2-hour initial intake where we do advanced diagnostics, everything from video nystagmography, computerized dynamic posturography, heart rate variability, quantitative EEG, and our whole neuro exam too. And from that whole initial examination, we're able to see different parts of the brain that are working well, but also more importantly, different parts of the brain that maybe aren't working as they should. So as we go through and we find these weak areas, we're often able to clinically correlate that to different symptomatology that they're having. So once we're able to locate these areas, think about the brain almost like a muscle. So once we find, for example, a cerebellum that isn't working as it should, we're able to do direct rehabilitation to make that part of the brain work better, which also ties directly over into the symptomatology that they're having. So chiropractic neurology, it's more of a clinical thought paradigm rather than a treatment protocol, because every single patient that we see is going to be immensely different. If we see, for example, 10 patients with concussion, all 10 of them are going to have a different treatment plan, because the fact of the matter is everyone's brain is very, very different. And that's why it's important that we have our lengthy intake, if you want to call it that, just because our care becomes very personalized for that patient. And if you just throw a black and white cookie cutter approach to a lot of these neurologic conditions, yeah, you're going to help some, but there's a large majority that you're going to kind of miss, I guess you could say, because you're not focusing directly on that patient's neurology. And from that fact alone, that's how we're able to see some pretty cool things in our office.
Wow, it's just fascinating. So different than the traditional way we tend to do things. You're really looking at each individual and evaluating each person. How did you get into this? What made you go this route and become a chiropractic neurologist?
Right. So as you said, I grew up in chiropractic. Both of my uncles are chiropractors. I've been getting adjusted since I was a little kid, and all throughout school, all throughout all my athletics, I was always healthy, never had any major injuries, knock on wood. But I always knew I wanted to do something with rehabilitation, and chiropractic seemed to be the best possible journey for me, just because it fits within my thought paradigms to healthcare, and I just love helping people. So I graduated college a little bit early, then I went down to Florida to start chiropractic school. And soon into school, again, I loved it, but I had a couple of unanswered questions. Because it makes complete sense how chiropractic works with fixing neck pain, with fixing back pain. But I was always so intrigued how chiropractic could help all these people with migraines, with dizziness, with anxiety, with GI issues, with people getting their hearing back, all these crazy things. And I was never able to get a true good answer about how chiropractic works and why it works so well. So soon into school, I started up taking some neurology programs. And then once you start learning about neurology, it's kind of a rabbit hole. So I took a couple of the classes and I was absolutely hooked because chiropractic works through neurology and there is no possible way around that. So I took a handful of courses and around probably 3-4 months into taking courses, I had some issues myself. Without getting into too much detail, I probably wasn't able to drive on a highway for more than 3 months. I could probably drive for 5 minutes. I would have to pull over. I would get dizzy. I would get lightheaded. So it became a serious issue. So through some of the base curriculum that I started learning through the neurology classes and through the help of some student doctors at the Palmer Clinic, I was able to get back on my feet pretty quickly. So after I got healed from that, I was like, I'm going to do this. This is so cool, so magnificent, so novel. And this is something that society needs. I have family that have been around the ringer through the standard allopathic model. Some get help, but some people are left with a lot of unanswered questions. And it's not that we're better, they're better. That's all water under the bridge. But the important thing is the patient gets the proper care that we need. And a lot of times it's a matter of co-managing, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, but it's a matter of putting your bias down, putting your ego down and doing what's right for the patient and what the patient needs. And within our paradigm, we're able to help a lot of patients that I guess you could say have lost hope. They've been through the ringer, they're on every medication, they've had a couple of surgeries, and whatever is done before just hasn't helped them. So with our unique individualized approach, we're able to get some relief of symptomatology when the standard allopathic model maybe hasn't served them too well.
Wow, that's just amazing. I just love how you're able to get to these people that have just lost hope, because there's a lot of those people out there and they don't know where to turn or that functional neurology even exists, right?
Right.
So what are some of the common conditions that you treat? Right.
So within our office, there's 3 of us in there. So it's me, Dr. Trevor Berry, who was on your show, I believe just a couple of weeks ago, and Dr. Russell Teams. So there's, I believe, 7 or 8 board certified chiropractic neurologists in the state of Arizona, and 3 of them are in our office. So with 3 of us in there, we're bound to see some interesting cases. I'd say primarily we see tons of concussion, TBI, neurodegenerative disorders, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, lots of dizziness, migraines, dysautonomia like POTS, and then also a handful of developmental disorders too, such as autism, ADHD, learning disabilities. And we're starting to see more and more pediatric brain injuries as well. Different things like anoxic births, post-drowning. And with our paradigm, like I said before, we're able to help a lot of these people out that are just looking for help anywhere.
So you talked about children, and I know you do a lot of working with kids. So what is your approach to treating kids with developmental disorders?
Right. So our approach for treating kids with developmental disorders is quite different than a lot of other healthcare practitioners. We quite different in the aspect of looking at it from a different true developmental approach. So very rarely, let's say, for example, with a kid with a reading disability, we're not necessarily looking at that reading disability as a straight, I can't read. We're doing our whole examination and looking at different things that affect the different networks in the brain that are intertwined with reading. So once we are able to localize those networks and make those neurologic pathways from a developmental model stronger that intertwine with reading, a lot of times we see the ability to read to follow up right after that. And we've seen plenty of kids get out of IEPs, get out of their different tutoring classes, not by making them read, but by strengthening their brain for the networks that help them read. So whenever I see a kid, I look at it right from how they develop from in utero into how a normal progression of a child should develop. So the first things to develop in kids is something called primitive reflexes. So primitive reflexes are present in utero, and they help us through that first year of life. All primitive reflexes should be integrated by that first year. There's a primitive reflex called the Babinski sign, which sometimes happens a little bit later. It could be up to 2 years of age. But the purpose of those primitive reflexes is to really get us through that first year of life. Everything from coming through the vaginal canal to breastfeeding to rolling over to be able to have different autonomic responses, to be able to react to the environment. So that is all the subcortical networks. So there's the brainstem, and then on top of the brainstem is the cortex. So these primitive reflexes are the first things to grow in the neurologic system. And from a developmental model, when I see a lot of these kids, the first thing that I'm going to be checking is primitive reflexes. With almost every kid I see that has some sort of developmental delay, there are some sort of primitive reflexes present. So when I go through and I see a primitive reflex not integrated yet, what that's telling me is that there's improper growth from the bottom up of the brain. So the brain has to grow from the bottom up to be able to regulate from the top down. So the first order of business with every kid, no matter what, is getting rid of these primitive reflexes. So we do that through primitive reflex remediation exercises, but also through our paradigm, we're able to do different sensory motor activation by activating the cortex to be able to come down and even inhibit those primitive reflexes. So if you look at, for example, somebody with late stage Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, the frontal lobe's job is to come down and work on those primitive reflexes. But if the brain's not working as it should, you're going to see the primitive reflexes come back and be present. So as we move up the developmental pyramid, I almost like to call it, and if you're listening as a patient of mine, you've definitely seen me draw this out. The second order of business, like I just said, is that sensory motor integration. So the brain grows all from experience. So from when you're born to around 3 years old, the right brain has more of a predominance of growing. Then it switches over to the left brain, then kind of goes back and forth from then on. But to have proper activation in the brain, you need proper stimulus. So I heard a colleague say this, and it resonated pretty well with me. And I think this is a good way to kind of just summarize what's happening from a developmental model and why we're seeing so many kids with all these issues. Is there is an overstimulation of different visual and auditory inputs, and there is a massive understimulation of vestibular input and proprioceptive input. So what this means is the brain, like I said, craves environmental stimulus to help grow and integrate. And with kids on their computers, on their phones, not going outside, the primary activation is through the visual and auditory stimulus, which doesn't nearly activate the brain as much as going outside and playing, using your imagination, going on the trampoline, going to the gymnasium, running around with your friends. That's one of the major drives of the neurologic system. And you'll see even with kids, one of the first therapies that we start enacting is different motor-based motor-based stimulus, different core exercises, different vibrations. We even do chiropractic adjustments. And then everything from vestibular therapy. Even though they're not dizzy, we know the projections from the vestibular system, from the inner ear, are just so vast in the brain. So by activating the vestibular system, we're able to drive different cerebellar networks, different frontal networks, to really start turning the brain on, if you would. So I got into the developmental neurologic side of it, I'd say around halfway through my training. I was always been intrigued why cases of developmental disorders are rising at a epidemic type rates. So I wanted to learn about the neurology and why it was happening. And right as I started learning different aspects of it, I remembered back to around midway through college, I went to Haiti for around a month. And these kids were the happiest, were the smartest, were the most intellectually curious kids I've ever met in my life. And I've worked with kids throughout high school. I ran an after-school program in college. So it didn't really resonate with me at first as I first went to Haiti, but as I started learning about the neurologic integration behind it, you see these kids, they wake up at 7 a.m., they leave the house, and they're running around all day. There's no cell phones, there's no TVs, there's no Netflix, there's no TikTok. All they have is their imagination, 2 hands, a soccer ball, and a friend to play with. And just that fact alone is a straight neurologic application of how a developing brain should be going. So a little off topic there, but moving up in that pyramid within the standard allopathic model and the standard of care within schools and different aspects like that, they're looking more so at the straight symptomatology and how they can manage that symptomatology. So another example, as I said with the reading, is focus and attention. How do you expect a kid to sit down and do their homework and be attentive if their brain simply does not have the integration and have the networks to be able to sit down and do their homework? It's not a focus and attention issue, it's a brain issue. And a lot of times these medications work pretty well, but that's not necessarily finding the underlying cause of what's the issue with the focus and attention. So think about, an analogy I like using is, think about like a fire alarm going on in your house. With medications, you could walk up, hit the fire alarm so it stops beeping, but you're not necessarily putting out the fire. What the better thing would be is to actually go and find the fire, put out the fire so the fire alarm stops going off. And that's kind of how our system works compared to just flushing these kids with medications, with different, even we're seeing a lot of kids on antidepressants now, and unfortunately it could be used in the meantime, but that's not a long-term solution for a lot of these kids. So as we're going through our therapies and we get the brain working a lot better, we often see these adjunctive therapies be that much more efficient. So when we're working, we'll go back to the dyslexia case, for example. If we get a referral from a reading specialist and she says, work on his brain, make the pathway stronger, we refer them back to the reading specialist, everything works that much smoother. So to kind of summarize that whole little spiel up, we're working from a straight developmental model of how the brain grows and develops naturally. Everything from primitive reflexes to sensory activation, and then you can start working a little bit more on that cognitive-based application. But that's really the basis of your behavior, of your academics, and to work from a straight brain-based model really lets us have a window into a lot of different circuitry in the brain that's missed with a lot of other therapies.
It's absolutely fascinating to hear you talk about how how the brain is growing, and that's really the root cause. So that's really the problem. And there's so many kids that are classified as ADHD. They can't stay still, they can't concentrate, and like you mentioned, and then the depression. And really what they needed is to just be running around outside and let their brain grow.
Right.
So
That's
can
a
we
great
please
place to
have you just
start.
like restructure the school system and
I wish.
right? Because
We
it's
have a couple of
so
things in the works.
important.
Yeah.
Right. And
It's
there must be it's people always search for, why is it that we have so many more kids that are ADHD? Is it all the vaccinations? Is it all this and that and cell phones? And people are always searching for that. And you're bringing up such an important topic for parents to consider, and making sure that the kids really get outside in the backyard and run around, or take them to the park. And it it's so important for that growing brain. It's just
so
amazing what
important.
the information that you're bringing to the table.
Right. Yeah, it's phenomenal stuff. And the thing is, we do some pretty cool therapies in the office, but a great place to start is just let your kids be kids. And just doing that alone will help the brain fire all sorts of new networks.
Yeah, there's something to that. Let your kids be out in the backyard and get muddy, and play with
Exactly.
sticks and bugs and whatever they can find. So
Right.
what are some of the therapies that you use in your office?
Right. So before we hop into any sort of therapies, from our examination, we could see, is the patient even ready to handle any therapies? Because there's a lot of kids that we have to start completely on the metabolic side of it. So we may have to run lab tests. We may have to do neurofeedback. We may have to even refer out before we could start up our therapies. So a common place to start with kids is running basic labs, your CBC, your CMP. We like running a lot of food sensitivity panels, organic acid tests. Once we run these tests, we're able to see levels of inflammation and work with the brain in the most optimal environment as we can. So if the brain is flooded with inflammation from bad foods, from toxic things in the environment, from intestinal permeability, so on and so forth, we'll be able to get results, but not nearly to the extent as if we put the body in the most optimal metabolic position naturally. So we do tons of dietary interventions. We work with a lot of supplementation. Once we have that in order, we could really start hitting the neurologic side of it a little bit harder. So we do everything, like I said, we work with a lot of core-based exercises, a lot of cerebellar-based activation, everything from balance to coordination to eye movement therapy to, first and foremost, the primitive reflexes, a lot of eye-hand coordination. We do neurofeedback in our office, vibrational therapy, chiropractic adjustments, different cross-cord activation. But one thing that stands out in our office, and I know more and more people are starting to implement this in the developmental model, is the use of low-level laser therapy. So just a year ago, Erconia Laser, I believe Erconia ran it. I know they used the Erconia Laser, but I'm not sure who authored the study. But they looked at a group of, I believe it was 40 children with autism from the ages of 5 to 17, 18 years old. And all they did was use low-level laser therapy. They did it 8 times. Each application was around 5 minutes. And before they enacted the laser, they did the aberrant behavior checklist, which is a super standardized way to look at different behavioral disorders, irritability in children. Is commonly used with autism. So within this study, they looked at that ABC checklist at week 2, at week 4 when the study was over, and also at week 8. and they found significant changes in irritability, social withdrawal, stereotypic behavior, hyperactivity, inappropriate speech, just by using the laser, which is absolutely phenomenal. And to go even deeper, what this study also did is they did a year follow-up with the same exact group, no laser past that initial 8 treatment session, and all of those levels stayed significantly improved compared to the sham placebo group. So just that fact alone, that tells me, that makes me want to scream low-level laser therapy and what we do from the rooftops. We work with kids with autism all the time, and what makes us a little bit different is we're not just doing laser like the study shows. We're doing all the dietary interventions, we're doing all our neuro rehab, and then once we finish every single session with at least 10 minutes of low-level laser therapy, we're seeing some pretty cool results pretty quick. So that study just came out 2018. The follow-up was in 2019. So hopefully this gets a little bit more press. Because like I said, I wish I could print the study out and just shout it from the rooftops, just because it's, especially with autism, there's a lot of ways that parents look for different improvements in their kids. And just with this one intervention alone, there's been shown to be pretty significant improvements.
Wow, that's just incredible. It's so impressive. People don't know that all these different alternative methods of treatment even exist. So it's just amazing. How do you co-manage cases with other healthcare professionals?
Right. So like I said a little bit earlier, once we have the brain working a lot better, other therapies seem to stick a lot better as well. With that being said, some of our patients with autism, they're being co-managed throughout the whole process with the cognitive behavioral therapist, with their tutors at school. Where we see most of the we'll treat them first, you treat them next is in that academic paradigm. So we work pretty closely with different reading specialists, cognitive therapists, different tutors at school, because they've seen hundreds and hundreds of kids, and they know what kids, let's work on reading, let's work on writing. They know which ones that will respond well to, but they're also trained, and we've actually done a little bit of training with them to be able to pick on some classic neurologic signs that say, maybe this isn't just a reading problem. With some of our other pediatric brain injuries, like our anoxic births, our drowning patients, we found that our little co-management team of our neurotherapy and laser therapy goes amazing with hyperbaric oxygen therapy and stem cell therapy as well. So what we have going right now is we have patients flying in from all around the country, all around the world, that come in to get their stem cell therapy, which is around an hour north of where we are. He's one of the most world-renowned pediatric stem cell therapists, if you would, doctors in the world. So they fly in, they get the treatment from him, they come right down to our office, and they usually stay from a week or two. We do therapies every single day. They get laser every single day. And we also work with another HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, place that's around a half hour from our office as well. So when these kids come in, we hit them from multiple different angles, and that seems to be the best route to lead to the quickest optimization of getting these children back.
Wow, just fascinating. It's just amazing that there can be so much improvement just within a 2-week period, right? It's just
right.
Incredible.
So with our 2 week after, so if a child has cerebral palsy, we like doing all the therapies we can right after that stem cell. And within that 2 week, our job isn't necessary to make them stand up and walk again and run around again and talk again, but our job is to start activating these networks as much as we possibly can. Then after our intensive week or two at our office, I send them home with a complete care plan that they should do every single day at home to keep turning those light switches on, keep the ball rolling, keep activating different parts of the brain. And as they come down for more stem cell therapy, we follow up with them, we do another evaluation, and we implement complete new exercises for where the patient is in the developmental realm. So it's pretty cool stuff. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. For people that are listening that are thinking, oh, wow, I want to take my child to this practice, can you just tell people where you're located and how easy it is to get to you guys?
Yes, so we are in Chandler, Arizona. It is right south of Scottsdale, around 10-15 minutes away. Our website is azchironeuro.com. You could also follow us on Instagram at azchironeuro. Our phone number is 480-756-2600. And if you check out our website, we have more contact information there. But yeah, we see people from all around the valley, all around the country, and yeah, we're happy to help any way that we can.
Right. And so for people who are not familiar with Scottsdale, Scottsdale is in Arizona, and it's about 20 minutes from Phoenix International Airport. So it's very easy to get to you guys, because they would fly into Phoenix, and then literally it's 20 minutes away is Chandler and Scottsdale. So very, very conveniently located, easy to access. What are some resources for people that they could find out some more information except for your website?
Right. So there is a phenomenal book, another chiropractic neurologist that kind of enacted a lot of the developmental neurology. His name is Dr. Robert Malillo. He's written 4 or 5 books about chiropractic neurology and how it could help with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, any developmental disorder. That book is called Disconnected Kids. It goes into tons and tons of detail about the neurology of the developing brain, why cases are rising as they are. But what's also super cool about the book is it walks you through a whole examination. And from the examination, it also gives you different treatment options that you could do to help combat the issues of the networks in the brain. So I'd say that is a very, very good place to start if you're new to this. It's a very easy read. You'll be able to get through it with how interesting it is and how well it's written in a day or two. And yeah, and it's just a great place to learn more about your kid's brain. Other resources, he has a couple other books. He has a very, very good autism book, which talks about what's causing autism. I forget the name of it, but it goes through some very interesting theories and compares and contrasts all the different theories about the increased prevalence of autism. He also has a nutritional book that talks about elimination diets, about different lab testing you could do, what diet works best for what kids. So Dr. Robert Malillo, I owe him a lot of gratitude because I learned a lot of this stuff from him. And he has his own website that talks about a lot of this stuff, but a great place to start to get your feet wet is getting Disconnected Kids.
Wow, such a wealth of knowledge. So again, for people that would like to work with you, you can find him on AZ Chiro Neuro. So that's AZCHIRONEURO. And that link is also in the podcast description. So you can just click on that link and go straight to the website. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Bor, for coming on the show today and sharing your incredible knowledge about the developmental disorders with children with all the listeners today. It's been a great pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on the show, and any way I'm able to get this message out, I always do. So thank you very, very much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. Make sure you are subscribed so you will be notified of new episodes as they become available. To learn more about me or to work with me spiritually for ancestral healing, medical intuitive, evidential psychic medium, or to take my 8-week-long course, Soul's Journey, Heart's Way, a course for authentic living, which will explore opening the doors to your divine potential, available in most time zones across the world and starting March 27, 2021. Please visit divinespiritualessence.com. To work with me as a physician, please visit drlottie.com. My book, Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul, an inspirational story about transformation, healing, and spirituality, is available online at Amazon as well as other online platforms worldwide.